My name is Diana Lopez, and this is Medusa's Awakening Podcast. Trigger warning. This episode might address sensitive subjects that may be distressing for some listeners. Topics discussed include violence, sexual violence, childhood abuse, mental health issues, and substance abuse. Please be mindful of your own well-being while listening. If you find these topics triggering or difficult, seek support from a mental health professional or a trusted individual. We thank you for listening. Welcome to episode 3, everybody. And if you are not one of these 5 people that I pay to listen to my podcast, welcome. And I'm happy to have you. I'm happy to have all of you. Thank you for those of you who constantly show up for me. I can't even appreciate you more than I already do. Okay, so let's get into this. In this episode, I want to talk about human trafficking and how it affects kids in our communities and here in the US. So let me start by giving you the general meaning of human trafficking. Human trafficking is the use of force, fraud, or coercion to compel a person into performing work and or services against the person's will. And some of the samples of trafficking include commercial sex trade, pornography, labor trafficking, drug trafficking. We can go into more. There's also, right, human smuggling, and then trafficking for organs. On Thursday night, me and my son went to the movies. We went to watch a film that just came out called City of Dreams. This movie is about how people from other countries can fall victim to trafficking schemes, and then they're smuggled into the US to be trafficked. This is the same executive producer as Sound of Freedom. The difference between this movie and Sound of Freedom is Sound of Freedom took place abroad, and that was based, I believe that was based on a true story, whereas City of Dreams is not based on a true story, it's just based on a story. What they did in this movie was they showed how labor trafficking, or just human trafficking in general, shows up here in the US. And which I appreciate, because what Sound of Freedom, well, while it was great to get the message out there and was great to start opening people's eyes to this and what a huge issue it is, not only here in the United States, but abroad. But that's what it did. It brought the issue abroad, and we're having trouble here, right? So what City of Dreams did was bring the issue here, which is great. The other piece to that is it didn't necessarily bring the issue here and how it affects people here, the kids here, the youth here, the adults that are here, and how it can just show up for regular US citizens. So now I'm not going to review the movies. That's pretty much all I'm about to get into with that. But if you've already seen Sound of Freedom and you were able to kind of stomach it, you could possibly get through this movie, because it also is just very tough to watch. You know, the abuse and the violence towards any human being is hard to watch. But it is completely necessary in the fact that it will show you how human trafficking shows up for us here. So again, while I appreciate that these movies are being made because it's leading to conversations about this invisible crime, and that is a part of what these movies show you, how invisible it truly is. And like City of Dreams, it shows how it happens in our communities and no one suspects anything, as well as it shows the intersection between labor trafficking and sex trafficking, which is important to note. The additional thing about City of Dreams, it shows you that the traffickers basically use the same strategy, in which is to prey on the vulnerabilities of the individual, promises of a better life, opportunities that they wouldn't otherwise have. What was different about City of Dreams is it shows you how human trafficking shows up in the US, but only with respect to immigrant victims, which is in fact very important for people to start recognizing. But equally important is the need for conversations about how traffickers target the youth in our communities. They are basically using the same strategy, which is to prey on the vulnerabilities of the individual, promises of a better life, opportunities, etc., um, to fool the kids here in the US. They are outside of our schools, they're on our social medias. You get the drift, right? They have access to our youth, free access, by the way. And as highlighted in the movie, there are an estimated 12 million children held against their will globally. Let me say that again. 12 million children are victims of trafficking. So that's about 1 in 4 who are being trafficked are kids. And for those of us that have had the pleasure of living in California, congrats, because we all live in the state that ranks #1 in human trafficking, with the Bay Area being the third highest in our nation. Now, what I did love about this movie is at the end of it, they showed on the screen newsreels of human trafficking stories and how it looks like in the US. So I'm going to do that for you. I'm not going to show it on the video, but I'm going to go ahead and read you some headlines from 2023, and it's specific here to the Bay Area. So I'm going to be quite honest with you. I wanted to give you headlines of what it looked like in the state of California for 2023. So I wanted to do California as a whole and then Bay Area separately. For both of those years. But as I started to go and list these things down, I thought to myself, I'm going to need like a 10-part series because it's a lot. It's just there was just too much out there. So I'm going to have to kind of nip it down a little bit for everybody. Um so what I have here is, and it's just a taste of what human trafficking stories were posted for the Bay Area in 2023. And then I'm going to give you little samples of some of the news articles, some of the human trafficking news that hit our airwaves in 2024. It's just going to be a few, but you're going to get the gist. So February 2023, ABC News reported Bay Area family sentenced after running decade-long human trafficking ring out of daycare. March 3rd, 2023, officials say California sex trafficking operations are out of control. May 12th, 2023, growing concern over abduction rate of young Black girls in Oakland. So according to this news article, 1,500 reported missing, 400 are Black girls and women. In May 17th of last year, Oakland nonprofits warn of kidnappings targeting Black girls and young women. And then according to this news article, the city of Oakland never declared a state of emergency. There was no task force created. Nothing happened. We didn't even have a chief of police in Oakland for a while. So everything kind of played into this factor. I don't know if it would have been different if there would have been a police chief. I'm just throwing that out there. On August 2nd of last year, FBI announces rescue of 21 human trafficking victims in the Bay Area. September 12th of last year, Bay Area college instructor charged with human trafficking. November 10th, OPD announced they successfully rescued juvenile victim of human trafficking. This was a tip from the National Human Trafficking Hotline, is how they were able to locate the individual. So in 2024, so this year, here's a few from this year. Suspected child trafficker arrested in San Jose, missing girl found alive in trunk. Police said that the girl was reported missing on February 25th and was found 1 month later in the trunk of a vehicle at a San Jose residence by East Palo Alto police detectives and San Jose police officers. Another news article, 3 accused of running brothels in San Jose arrested. A community coming together and forwarding tips has led to the arrest of 3 alleged human traffickers in San Jose. The trio is accused of operating brothels in the 200 block of Palacio World Circle and Bonita Avenue, and the 1100 block of Guilford Avenue. While police raided the alleged brothels on August 28th, 4 adult human trafficking survivors were rescued. South San Francisco police shut down brothel, arrest women on pimping charges. And this was also after sustaining tips that they served a warrant on the apartment, coming into contact with the two human trafficking survivors and two suspected sex buyers. So hopefully this kind of gives you an idea of what we are facing here. I mean, I don't know how much louder I have to say this, but I still get met with shocked and surprised faces every time I try to talk about how human trafficking is a huge problem. Not only with the adults, but with the kids. And the thing is, um in 2018, it was passed that there is supposed to be human trafficking curriculum taught in schools. Now, I feel like in this day and age, with the amount of issues that are happening surrounding this, what's what are we going to do? What's the cure? What's the thing that's going to help us? Well, I get the first thing would be, right, like if the cartels and all the criminal organizations just happen to cease to exist one day. I mean, that would definitely really give us a lead in knocking this out. But until that happens, and we cannot go under the thing of, I'll just keep an eye on my kid, keep tabs on my kid, just keep my kid under lock and key. Like we can't do that. We can't raise people who are so afraid to go outside, because that will lead to mental health issues. And then we're jumping on a whole other bandwagon, right? Like we're having to cure that. Why, instead of creating a space of to be scared, to run and hide and in fear, why don't we empower? Right? So like let's at least start with that. We have to start somewhere. And in this day and age, it has to be that we need to start not only learning for ourselves as adults on how to love ourselves and ways to empower ourselves, but we also have to be able to teach that to the younger generation, whether you have kids or not. You can have a niece, a nephew, you can have somebody in your family who's LGBTQIA, two spirit. The difference, the differences in our society is that we all tend to want to ignore and hide from the problem. Don't see it, don't look at it. It's scary. I can't deal with it. I'm not asking you as a society to go out there and be PIs and stand on block and with your binoculars looking at, like, no. I'm not asking for that. What I'm asking you to do, and what has been very apparent in these news articles that I just read, was tips from the community. Tips from the community. This crime is $150 billion a year profit on something that is completely illegal. And the reason why it has gotten so bad is because, one, people are not educated on what to look for. They don't even know it truly exists here. And two, they are too scared to say anything. I am not asking you to be crime fighters. I am asking you to get educated as adults so you can pass along this knowledge. It is so important for us to stand behind our youth. And I know a lot of you are saying, well, a lot of these kids, they have parents of their own. Shouldn't they be responsible for doing this? I don't want to say the majority of human trafficking, but a lot of human trafficking happens in the home. So no, a lot of these kids don't have those parents that are there to protect them, that are there for their better interest. A lot of kids have parents that are non-existent. A lot of these kids who are vulnerable to traffickers are kids who are homeless, kids in foster care, and basically any kid on the street who doesn't have love and attention at home, doesn't have somebody to give them a meal, doesn't have somebody to tell them how to walk through life, how to empower them. those are the kids we have to start protecting, because the more and more kids wind up in foster care, on the streets, in group homes, without anybody out looking to protect them, these traffickers are more than happy to pick them up. And they know exactly what to do, what to say. They have it down to a science. And I'm telling you, they are good at it. And if it's not until we can all open our eyes to this and really, instead of, at first I started a nonprofit called the Medusa Project, and that's located here in the Bay Area. And that was to start this kind of campaign. I wanted, you could go online and you could Google human trafficking, and you're just going to get a bunch of websites with a bunch of words. No kid's going to read that. They're just not. So I'm developing a website that's going to be geared to teaching kids not only about human trafficking, but about a variety of different things, right? How to get through life, how to self, regulate emotions, things like that. Like there's just going to be it's going to be towards kids, our youth, and how to advocate for themselves is especially important. So that's my little plug for the Medusa Project, by the way. Thank you for listening. Um, so for those that, like I said, these traffickers, they know what they're doing. They know how to prey on kids' vulnerabilities. They know what they want. They know they want that ear. They know they want that person to listen to them, to understand them, to be there for them while they're hurt and in pain. Um, a, there's plenty of kids in our society that are like that. And how do we how do we help them? How do we make this an us thing instead of that's not my problem, that's a them thing? Well, it starts with us, right? Realizing what we need to heal within ourselves in order to be able to look past the it's not in my job description type of conversation, right? Um, let's take these videos that I've been seeing in Japan. You can literally let your kindergartner walk to school alone because the society as a whole keeps an eye on those kids. They don't have that's not my job description in their vocabulary, right? It's meant for kids to be able to go get mom some milk from the store, and they could be 5 or 6 years old and be able to go to the store, hand that person money, and know that nobody is going to mess with them while they go there and back. Do we have that here in the US? Anywhere in the US? I would love for somebody to speak on this and tell me, you know what, there's this town here in the US, because then we need to start studying those towns. What do they have in their DNA that we can bring into our communities? Because in order for a community as a whole to start healing and to start moving along with this programming of we watch all kids in our community, is you have to start in your home first. So it starts with your home first. It starts with you as the individual. It starts with your home as a whole. And then that leads to all the other homes in the community. Could you imagine a space in your community? Could you imagine your community right now? Just go outside and look at where you live and think to yourself, well, how would it look like if everybody on this block looked out for one another? How would it look if everybody on this block healed and then taught all our kids to do the same? Do you know that the traffickers would have more of a harder time? Now, there is an additional trafficker out there that is called the gorilla pimp, and those are the ones that actually go and kidnap girls. So, you know, self-defense can play a huge part. And what I would love to see at some point is self-defense being taught to kids for free. I'm not saying that people who are teaching the self-defense, right, that's their business. Like they need to create money, but where can they get their money from other than, the parents who are probably struggling but want to make sure that their kids are being able to learn how to defend themselves? I have an idea. How about self-defense being taught in schools as a PE requirement? I'm not saying, let's have a full-on boxing class. Like, I get it. Parents aren't going to sign off on something where it's like, oh, they're just going to turn around and use it against. No. What is that teaching them? When you teach a kid self-defense, you also teach them discipline. So if that is your biggest fear is I don't want to sign my kid up for this. Kids shouldn't be able to sign up for this because they'll just use it to fight in schools. They will use also the self-discipline that is taught with self-defense. So we need to remove that programming, parents. We need to give our kids a chance in this life. Otherwise, how are we going to keep proceeding with this? Because when we have damaged kids, then we have damaged adults, right? And then we have all these adults running around that aren't living, are stuck in their same old habits, drug use, right? That's a chance for more drugs to be used. Like we already have a mental health and substance abuse issue in this country. Why is that? Now, before you guys all come for me and say people are lazy, they don't want to get jobs, blah, 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 blah. You can't blame it on mental health all the time. I got you. I got you. But maybe because you haven't seen it from the perspective of the person who is literally at rock bottom in front of your face. When you go into downtown San Francisco and all you do is you go to the Tenderloin and you see all the people bent over, um, because they're on the blues, they're on the what trank fent car fentanyl, like whatever, right? Whatever it is, they are literally just trying to buy themselves time until they die, right? Ultimately, what they're doing is basically going, I can't deal. I'm just going to shut all the way down. And that's why they look like robots who've just been powered down. It hurts them more to be awake than it does half asleep bent over on a corner somewhere. I'm not saying run out, hand them a bunch of money, or they have to find their own way. Everybody has to find their own way. They do. But we can't do that if the mental health services and the substance abuse services are dwindling and we're waiting months and months and months and months for our kids to get an appointment and they're sitting there struggling, right? Anybody automatically goes to alcohol, substances to numb, to not feel, right? We call it wanting to have a great time, which we do, right? But at the end of the day, what are we doing? We're numbing. That's all. Numbing from the day, numbing from the life we have, numbing from the kid we have, whatever it is, it's numbing, right? So again, how can we start? How can we get this to where we can can really hone in and make a scene? We need to make a scene is what needs to happen, right? It needs to be a campaign. Now I'm going to date myself. What was it, the 80s? Right? I think uh just say no. Just say no to drugs. It was a campaign in every school on the TV. Campaign, campaign, campaign. We need a human trafficking campaign here in the United States, across the board. Florida, out of all places. Sorry, Florida. I love you all there. Um, they teach human trafficking in grades kindergarten through 12th grade. Now, a lot of people are probably going to be like, human trafficking for a 5-year-old. Like, there's ways to do this. No, I'm not going to show them videos of, sex trafficking or what that looks like. But we are going to empower them, right? Agency of yourself, because not a lot of kids have that, right? As us as parents, we're always trying to tell them what to wear, what to do, what to eat, where to go, right? They don't have power over themselves when they're kids. But at some point, and I get why we do it, we're raising them. In our heads, this is us raising them. This is us protecting, this is us giving them what they're needing, right? We're trying to do the best that we can at every turn. But at some point, it has to shift to say, you are an independent individual with your own needs, with your own life, and you need to make sure that you are not giving your power away to somebody else, especially those that can hurt you. So again, campaign, 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 right? Um, but in order for us to campaign, we need the support of the parents. We need the parents to go to these schools, to go to your PTA meetings and start yelling for more visibility. We need posters up. We need hotline numbers up. We need this in the, are they called the wellness rooms that the schools have now, I think, or emotional support room. I can't remember what they're called, but that new setup where they have counselors and things in there. We need all of that, and we need more resources, right? So here in the Bay Area, we are about to have the Super Bowl in 2026 and the World Cup. This brings in traffickers. This brings in trafficking, where we're already stretched. We're already at the max, right? Like I don't know how many times I've gotten a phone with a nonprofit and they just didn't have any room. No more availability. And this is just a regular day, right? It's not during a Super Bowl. It's not during the World Cup. This is just a regular day in the life of a California city. And the state of California did not hand over over $200 million in funding. Ceased to exist this year that were supposed to go to nonprofits and task force, and people are struggling. Nonprofits are struggling. I know we're struggling. The money is not out there for us to be able to do our work. So we need to make this a bigger issue, because in order for us to do this type of work, in order for us to be able to maintain and be able to go out there and create what we need to create, the money needs to be there, unfortunately. And it sucks for a lot of us, especially those who have had to close their doors, task force who had to shut down because they didn't have the money anymore to keep people on. It is horrendous to think that at a time we should be gearing up and creating more space and making sure the resources are there, making sure the help is there, making sure there's beds available. People are struggling. So, as I said early on, what has really helped in our society is tips from the community, especially when it comes to these brothels are in your community. They are not hiding them out yonder, like they're not finding some like desolate area. They're on your block. What are you going to do about it? Tips from the community help rescue victims. I am not asking you to run out and be the superhero. I'm not asking you to run out and kick down doors. I'm asking you to, if you see something, you need to say something. And if you are here in the Bay Area, you don't even need to call. A lot of, I think Oakland police, San Jose police, um, a lot of the police departments are using reportjohn.org. Now, these are to report sex buyers, but honestly, just you don't even need to know all that, right? It's not like you're going to run out and be like, are you buying? Or are you the trafficker? Like, you're not going to do that, right? I don't want you to do that. Please don't do that. So reportjohn.org, right? Or you could call the Bay Area Human Trafficking Hotline. That number is 415-907-9911. And if you're in the other states and you're listening to this, there's a national hotline. And then you could say, I want to report this. I'm in this area, city, state, blah, blah, blah. I'm not quite sure what to do. The National Trafficking Hotline helped rescue survivors in this area. And they can rescue survivors in your area, right? They can recover the victims out of this insane profit that's $150 billion a year. Come on, this shit's illegal, right? Okay, so the national hotline number, that one is 1-888-373-7888. Put it in your phone. And actually, if you look up the national hotline number, you can even text. And if you have a child, figure out what the texting system is for 911 here. Figure out, because there was a story about a girl who was about to be trafficked, about to be abducted, and she texted the police and they came and found her. They came and got her. It is important for us to make sure that we are arming our youth with all the information. What all we really can do is that give them the information. And I know you'll be probably met with resistance, right? We're talking about kids, right? Teenagers, nothing ever bad happens to them. They're invincible, and that's great. But maybe say, fine, you don't think it's going to happen to you. What if it happens to a friend of yours? What if it happens to somebody you love? A sister, a brother, a cousin? You never know. What if it happens to your neighbor friend that you're kind of like, things seem a little sketch over there, you know? Not quite seeing anything though, like kind of how do I help? All it could be is just you engaging with that child and making sure that child has what they need, especially if you're seeing cuts, bruises, scars, right? They're not just for the weather, okay? Like if you see your daughter, son, their non, binary children, kids, if you see them dressed inappropriately, and not just like, oh my God, that's super inappropriate, like they shouldn't be going out like that, but like honestly, like if they're constantly with an outfit that just doesn't suit them and doesn't it I know, especially for women, we have this instinct in us when something is wrong. And that is such a big part too, is to teach, especially young women, to trust that instinct in us, right? We're so busy listening to our negative head talk that sometimes we don't realize that that other head talk that says, hey, this doesn't sound right. This doesn't look right. Maybe we should walk away, or maybe we should, listen to that. I would rather look like a fool and say, I want out of here because I don't feel safe, right? Than to be stuck in a situation that I feel like I can never get out of, or have to wait for somebody to come rescue me out of, Give them the tools that they need is the bottom line. We can't put them in a bubble, but we can empower them. And we can show them, especially, you know, I had a conversation with a survivor, and she said a lot of the times it's like a relationship, and it's trauma bonding with your trafficker. That trauma bond happens in all kinds of relationships. I don't know how many relationships I had where I trauma bonded with them, right? Like they were my type of crazy, right? Like we need to start showing these kids what toxic relationships looks like, like, and not just like pointing out to them as you're pointing at the guy that they are suddenly interested in. Like, don't do it that way, because that's all you're going to do is push them closer, right? Like, come on, this story has been written thousands of years. All you do is push them closer to that. No, you don't wait for that. You do it now while they're interested in boys, or boys being in, or interested in girls, or what have you. We have to start doing this for our kids. And it's true. All we can do is provide, right? We can provide the education, we can provide all the information. It is up to them. Now, each of our kids, whether we want to think about this or not, are here on their own path. We can only support them to get to that path, but it is up to them. But the more that they are empowered with knowledge, the more they start picking better paths. And I am a firm believer in all of that. And like, honestly, as I start, I start to see more and more videos of women healing and doing all these things. We need to start also encouraging men to heal, especially Caucasian men. And I don't want to single them out, but you are a huge demographic that needs to start healing. You really do. Men in general need to start healing, because until men start healing, women cannot be safe. Right? Now, I'm not saying all men are like this, because they're not. There is definitely some great men out there, and I appreciate you all, but I would hope that you could collectively help with this, right? If you are a man and you are already healing, or you're healed, or you're still in your healing journey, help, right? Help gain some momentum in the male demographic, right? Like, we need you to heal. So oftentimes women are always told, oh, you're too masculine. You're too masculine. You're not girly enough. We have to be masculine. We have to be, because we don't feel safe around you guys. Generations, centuries upon centuries, generations upon generations, women are second-class citizens. We are meant to be kept in line, right? That's how they wanted us. That is not our job. We are literally heaven on earth here. And I'm not even kidding, because without us, nobody's getting born on this planet, right? And I realize, yes, we do need men for that, but it doesn't actually transport into physical form unless you got one of us sitting up in here. So we can't keep on doing the same thing that we're doing and not actually trying to solve the problem. All anybody wants to do nowadays is point fingers at Democrats and Republicans. It's your fault. It's your fault. It's your fault. Let's not do that here. I don't want to do that here. We need real solutions. We need real action. And that action doesn't include pointing fingers and then nothing get done. Like, that's not the action we need to see anymore. We need people to start really actually doing shit, right? Like, tell me what you guys think. You could put it in the comments. You could go on my IG. You can go on TikTok. Like, tell me, like, if you think that there is honestly a better way of doing this without bringing up politics. I'm all ears. I want to hear from you. And if you're interested in finding out what human trafficking looks like in your area, leave a comment. Let me know. I'm happy to check it out in your state. We will be doing some more of these podcasts that will dive a little bit more into human trafficking as a whole, but also to kind of segment it, right? Like, there's different portions of it that we do need to discuss and talk about and bring to light, and how things look in our communities. So again, the information on the tip lines and the hotlines and the reportjohn.org. I will try to have that links attached to the podcast. But in the meantime, I hope that you all enjoyed this episode 3. And I feel like it was important to kind of get this information out there. And I know it's hard to hear, but and right, hard to watch, but know that there is hope out there. The more the community gets educated on what to look for, there's hope. You have just, if you go out and get educated on your own, you have just given somebody hope. Think about that. And I know you're probably saying to yourself, but it's not my job to do that. It's fine. It's fine. Maybe there's something in the way you were brought up or your upbringing or something that happened in your life that is leading you right to that. And that's totally fine. That is totally fine. There is nothing wrong with that. But, maybe just ask yourself, like, okay, why do I think that? Like if you're not interested, you're not interested. And I totally get that. It's hard. It's hard to pay attention to. I understand. So I am here for you as your host. Um, I hope you enjoyed this episode. I hope that it actually did kind of bring to light and to also give some hope um, for our kids in our community and for some of the adults too. That there's plenty of elders. There's trafficking going on in the elder homes, right? That it's all over. So the more you could just kind of get some knowledge about it and kind of get some understanding about it, and just having the resources out there at the tip of your fingers is a great way to start. So I appreciate you all listening to this episode of Medusa's Awakening podcast, and I hope that you will be back for more. Thank you for listening to Medusa's Awakening podcast. Stay up to date on new episodes by following, liking, and subscribing to our pages. We are on Instagram at Medusas_Awakening, on YouTube at Medusa's Awakening, and on TikTok at Awakening_Medusa_podcast.